It's now time for questions to the Office of the First Minister and Deputy First Minister. And firstly, we have topical questions, and I call Dominic Bradley.
Agus bhfuilms éifrí den las céad ara an bhfuil sé híon tiománta go páirsanta don droichead ag an Caoilisce. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I would like to ask the Deputy First Minister, is he personally committed to the bridge at Norrawater? Thank you.
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. I'm absolutely committed to the construction of the new bridge at Norrawater, and I do so on the basis of the tremendous success that a very small bridge in my own city has made to the life of that city. Something like £17 million sterling was spent on it, and it has had a massive impact on the city and effectively represents a new iconic image for the city. Likewise, I think that the construction of a bridge at Norrawater would have a similar effect for the people of North Louth and South Down, and add immensely to the tourist potential in that area. We in this House all understand the difficulties in terms of the tendering process and the scale of the tender that was way in excess of what was expected. And since that, there have been, I think, a number of discussions around whether or not a remedy could be put in place. Myself and Katrina Rian were involved in discussions in Rostrevor with the Taoiseach. I've also been involved in other discussions with very senior advisors to the Taoiseach. And I know that in the backdrop there is a sense of some remedy for the difficulties that exist. So I think it's absolutely important in the context of the next very short while that we establish whether or not enough funding can be put in place to ensure that this bridge is constructed. So I think what I would like to see as the next important step in this process is a commitment from the government in Dublin in conjunction with other aspects flowing from the councils on both sides of the divide as to whether or not this is a scheme that is going to go ahead. I certainly would like to see it go ahead, and I'm very much committed to it.
I call Dominic Bradley for a supplementary.
Cumaigat lascan choile agus gumbuigas leis an las céad as achta ragra agus bhí me héanaan nire déanaí agus intim leis an bhéidir dúirte faoi gorthaid na síochána sin. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and thank the Deputy First Minister for his answer. Indeed, I was in Gerry recently and I walked over the Peace Bridge to Abrington and saw the Turner Prize there. I must say I was more impressed by the bridge than I was by some of the exhibits.
Would the member come to his question, please?
But having said that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, would the Deputy First Minister recommend to the Finance Minister to provide the funding which would fill the existing gap in the Norrawater project? Thank you.
Well, first of all, if I could say that I too visited the Turner Prize and was very impressed, and I know that something in the region of over 1,000 people each day have visited. So there's a tremendous interest in it, and I would encourage everybody to go to the city for the purposes of seeing the Turner Prize for the first time ever outside of England. I think that in the context of the second part of the commentary that was made, I think it would be wrong to identify our Finance Minister as the problem in regard to Norrawater. There is effectively a responsibility on the Irish Government, on ourselves, on the SEUPB and on the councils on both sides of the Norrawater to come up with a solution. I don't know if that solution can be found. I would like to hear the Irish Government say more about it. In my discussions with the Taoiseach in Rostrevor now, quite a number of weeks ago, it was indicated to me that he did intend to say something about it, but thus far there has been silence. So I would hope that in the course of the next short while we will hear as to whether or not a solution can be found to the problems presented by a tender which was widely beyond the expectations of all of us.
The member at question number 2 has withdrawn his name. I call Ian McCrae.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can the Deputy First Minister update the House on the progress that's been made on the Community Safety College for Desert Creek?
Well, I think the member is a colleague of mine in the constituency, knows that this is a project that I'm very keen to see brought to fruition. There, of course, have been difficulties also with that particular project, something in the same realm of the discussions that we've just had over the Narrow Bridge tender. I know that refinements and amendments have been made, and I have a very full and clear expectation that the Community Safety College in Cookstown will go ahead, and I fully and absolutely support that.
I call Ian McCrae for supplementary.
The Deputy First Minister will know that the local economy is in need of this important college to take place. Can the Deputy First Minister give any detail as to when any announcements will take place in respect of the proposed start dates, and can he give an assurance that the work will take place, will be done as quickly as possible to ensure there's no further delay?
I absolutely agree with the member in terms of the contribution that the construction of such a community safety college will have for the citizens in Cookstown. No doubt bringing much needed economic benefit to the area. The discussions that have taken place thus far have progressed the project. I believe that we're very close to seeing the project commence. And I do believe that we can have reasonable expectations that the problems that have been afflicting the project over the course of the last number of months will be resolved, and the work will begin as soon as possible, hopefully around the beginning of next year.
The member at question 4 has withdrawn their name also, so I call Ms Brenda Hale.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I'd like to ask the Deputy First Minister, he will be well aware of those whose loved ones are known as disappeared. What particular help can he offer, given his Republican background, to enable and ensure that those bodies are returned for family burial?
Well, my full sympathy and compassion is with all of those families. They are by far and away the most important people in the course of this discussion. I believe that what happened to these families was totally and absolutely wrong. I believe it was cruel. I believe it was unjustified. And of course the IRA were responsible. I and other Sinn Féin leaders, other Republican leaders, have over the course of a number of years been involved in exhorting anyone with any scrap of information whatsoever about the location of these bodies to bring them forward. And that has brought considerable success for some families, but sadly not for others. And I would again reiterate my appeal to anyone out there in the community who in any way were involved in any of these situations to bring forward that information, to bring it forward to the Commission, to bring it forward to anybody in a responsible position within society, and to bring it forward to Republican leaders who I think are very anxious to see this situation resolved. So my full compassion and support is with the families. It's been a terrible ordeal. It's been a despicable ordeal. And I believe there is a huge responsibility on everybody, including myself as a Republican leader, to appeal to anybody out there who can assist these families out of the nightmare that they face on a daily basis.
I call Brenda Hale for supplementary.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for his answer, and given his answer, how can he then explain the conflicting reports emanating from the Republican movement about why these murders were committed and by whom?
Well, I mean, I think that's another matter altogether. which undoubtedly people will have their own particular opinions about. The families at this stage that I have listened to appear to be more concerned to have the recovery of their loved ones. And I think that's where the big focus is at this moment in time. I think there is a huge responsibility on all of us to support those families, to support them to a resolution, the resolution that they seek, which is the return of their loved ones. As I've said, there has been considerable success, but there are a number of families out there who are still suffering. And when I listen to the interviews that they've given, including some in the course of the last couple of hours, their big focus is on the recovery of the bodies as opposed to anything else.
I call Mervyn Story.
Thank you, Mr. I was following on really from the question of my colleague, Brenda Hale. Given all the public concern that there has been expressed over the last number of weeks and months, both in regards to the disappeared and also the activities of the President of his party, what action has he taken to ensure that all available information is made available to the courts, to the Police Service of Northern Ireland, and that any scrap of information, as he refers to, in relation to the allegations in regards to Gerry Adams and in regards to the terrible death of Jean McConville and the other disappeared, is brought to the courts?
Well, I think that the issue around the terrible circumstances of child abuse have been well articulated and well aired in the course of recent times. And Gerry Adams has made public his position in relation to the role that he played, given that this was first reported to both the social services and to the RUC in 1987. And I do believe there is a huge responsibility on everybody within society, without exception, that whatever information they have in regard to situations of child abuse has to be brought forward to the proper authorities. And over the course of, I think, many years now, many organisations, I think, have learned a lot from what have been quite scandalous cases that have been thrown up in the course of the last 10, 15 years, and have put in place procedures to ensure that, and I hope this applies to all political parties, it certainly applies to my party, that anybody who has possession of any information whatsoever in relation to the abuse of children has a duty and a responsibility to bring that forward to the police service. Similarly, in relation to the issue of bodies that have not been returned to loved ones, anybody with any scrap of information whatsoever, I would wholeheartedly and earnestly appeal to all of them, if they're out there, to listen very carefully, not so much to what I have to say about it, but certainly to the families who very eloquently and very passionately have argued the case for information to be brought forward. People are out there with that information. They have a duty to bring that information forward to alleviate the nightmare that these families are going through.
I call Mervyn Story.
Does the Deputy First Minister then, following on from his logic when he called for the Cardinal to resign, given the allegations in relation to child abuse within the Roman Catholic Church, does he now believe that it is time for his party president to resign and to ensure that there is transparency and there is openness and consistency in regards to the approach of what is a heinous and an evil crime, and that is abuse of children?
Can I remind members that we're questioning the Deputy First Minister in his role as Deputy First Minister? I'll put it over to you if you wish to respond.
Yeah, I am prepared to answer the question. I don't believe that there's any similarity whatsoever between the case of the Cardinal and Gerry Adams. In the case of the Cardinal, a child was sworn to secrecy. In Gerry Adams' case, Gerry Adams was fully in support of his niece, travelled to Buncrana, confronted his brother, and supported his niece and her mother when she reported the abuse to the social services and to the RUC. I think the other thing that's missed in all of it is that, you can clearly see that sometimes in situations like this, people like to take political advantage without recognising, for example, the trauma that the Gerry Adams' family went through as a result of the abuse that was inflicted on them by their father. And in many ways, that entire family are victims, including Gerry Adams. And I think people need to understand that, and they need to place themselves in that situation where quite clearly something was happening within that family which was terribly, terribly wrong. So I think that the two situations in regard to the Cardinal and Gerry Adams are not the same.
And that is the end of topical questions to the